Hello and welcome back to Histories Tech. Today we are continuing to look at various types of military vehicles, and we are going to look at the fuel trucks and fuel tankers. The topic for today's video actually comes from a request, and they asked, why don't people actually talk about this? And that's a great point. This is an extremely important part of military logistics. So let's go ahead and look at the history and development of the fuel truck / fuel tanker. Now, the adoption of vehicles into the military was kind of a slow process. You got to remember, at this time, vehicles were nowhere near as robust and reliable as they are today. In fact, one of the earliest vehicles to be requested for the United States Army is this right here, the Jeffrey Quad, which the whole purpose this vehicle was even being bought and developed was that the Army wanted to start replacing their mule teams as the standard means of transporting equipment. When the Army switched to more heavy vehicles, such as the Liberty truck, there started to become a problem of fuel consumption. Now, the easiest way for them to fix this issue with fuel consumption was actually to add auxiliary fuel tanks to these trucks. So many of these early trucks, such as the Liberty truck, the Mack AC, the Miltor trucks, actually had auxiliary fuel tanks on board. Now, there were a few issues with this at the time. One, it was a two-man job to pump from the auxiliary tank to the main tank on the trucks. Also, this was designed as a self-serving system. It was not designed to fuel other vehicles. So these trucks had to basically carry their own fuel, even auxiliary. It really does defeat the purpose of having this extra fuel because people will use it and not use it as a reserve. And the most common means of dealing with this was just to basically fill up canisters and put them on the back of the truck. But now you've eliminated the cargo space for these trucks. Now we're going to start seeing purposely used fuel tankers start to appear about the mid-19-teens. And mainly it's going to be civilian vehicles being pushed into military service, but it isn't until the deployment of this vehicle right here, the deployment of tanks on the battlefield, really pushed logistics to a new front, because these massive hulking machines were gas guzzlers. They ate gas like you wouldn't believe. And so being able to fuel these vehicles in the field was crucial. Now, at the time, most common means, like I said, was barrels in the back of a truck, maybe small fuel trailers. And so the need for a fast response vehicle that could refuel tanks in the field was crucial to battlefield combat. You're going to start seeing more and more military fuel trucks on the battlefields during World War I. And so we're going to start seeing basically every major power who is deploying tanks is going to start bringing in fuel trucks, not only for their tanks, but for all of their vehicles, in order to basically better logistically support them. Now, because of the various post-World War I treaties, such as the Treaty of Versailles, the Washington Naval Treaty, we're going to see in the 1920s development of these logistical equipment is just not going to be as much of a priority as trying to kind of skirt around some of the issues of the treaties. And so we're not going to really see these changes and updates to this equipment until closer to the 1930s. During this time frame, we're going to see the United States develop its 2.5-ton 6x6 truck, also known as the Deuce and a Half. The Germans are going to come up with their LKW, and we're going to start to see these more medium-sized utility trucks being developed. And if you actually want to learn more about the Deuce and a Half, I do have another video. I will link it in here for you to watch. But as we see time progress, we're going to see this become the standard frame for fuel trucks. Not just here for the United States, we're going to see it with the British, the Germans, the Japanese, and the Soviets are all going to start utilizing utility trucks for their fuel tankers. And so the role of these trucks is going to evolve from just standard vehicles and tanks to being utilized to refuel aircraft, to even refuel ships and submarines and things like that. And so these tankers are going to be an incredible part of necessary logistics for the war. And once again, we're going to see every military utilize them. And some of them are going to utilize them a little bit later than others. You know, the Germans had initially developed their tanks so that they could just run off of gasoline found in any country they invaded. And they ended up learning the hard way that you kind of back up your resource and you're going to have to take fuel with you because there might be shortages where you're going. And as we progress through later on wars like the Korean War and the Vietnam War, the trucks are going to continuously be upgraded. The old Deuce and a Half is going to be upgraded to the M35. We're going to start seeing heavier utility trucks used more and more for fuel transportation purposes. And by the time we're fully into the Cold War, it's going to be every single theater of war that's going to take place, no matter where it's at, who's involved. Fuel trucks are going to be seen on every single type of battlefield. and they are going to continuously adapt. Even to this day, we're still seeing the importance of these vehicles on the battlefield, which is why these trucks are continuously being upgraded and evolved. Now, the main standard for countries such as the United States, the HEMTT-A4 fuel truck, was built in the 80s, and it's still being continuously upgraded and updated to be utilized. And even though there are some newer trucks like the HET M1070 or even the LBSR, they are still being continuously upgraded and utilized, as there is no reason to not have a fuel truck on the battlefield. And if you don't think this is as crucial as a piece of equipment as it is, I give you the more recent invasion of Ukraine by Russia, in which during the opening days, they actually ran out of fuel for their tanks. And if you think, well, it's Russia, maybe they don't have the equipment. They've had fuel trucks. In fact, they're using the same series of fuel trucks since the 70s. But similar to the Germans during World War II, it was more than likely presumed that they could just find the fuel they needed, or even the possibility that the war wouldn't last long enough for them to need to have all these resources. If you've ever actually studied war, you'd learn that logistics wins wars. But there you have it, a quick look at the fuel truck, the fuel tanker, this vital, extremely crucial piece of equipment that you're not going to take any type of modern military in the world anywhere without having this piece of equipment. So that's it for today. I thank you for joining me, and I look forward to talking to you on the next time.